Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the PCOS Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Farah Duro, licensed reproductive acupuncturist and Oriental medicine practitioner. And I've been working with PCOS for over 15 years in my practice in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I've also overcome the symptoms myself through the use of traditional Chinese medicine and a few very crucial lifestyle changes. My biggest hope in launching this podcast is to help you by sharing what I've learned along the way and by breaking some of the most common myths about PCOS that I've encountered myself and in my practice. So what exactly is PCOS? That's a question we get a lot. And in the coming weeks, we're going to talk more about some of the different types of PCOS, ranging from mild to moderate to severe as far as symptoms go. And we know that PCOS does not discriminate. It affects women from puberty through postmenopause and really affects all ethnicities and races. The tricky part is diagnosing PCOS can be a bit confusing, but based upon a criteria known as the Rotterdam criteria, a woman must present with at least 2 out of the following 3 symptoms. And the first one is lack of or irregular ovulation. And it's sometimes also known as anovulation if you're not ovulating at all. The second is hyperandrogenism or increased testosterone, DHEA. You might have abnormal hair growth, and also you could have hair loss as well on your scalp. And the third one is polycystic ovaries. So that would be visible on an ultrasound that you would have with your OBGYN or your reproductive medicine specialist. So here are the alarming facts about PCOS that a lot of you might be experiencing. Now, number one, we know it can lead to infertility, weight gain, acne, depression, and irregular cycles if left untreated. And between 5 to 10% of women of childbearing age in the United States, or roughly 5 million women, have PCOS, and the number is climbing worldwide. And also the third thing is undiagnosed PCOS is extremely common. So that number that we just mentioned is probably even higher, with over 50% of cases going unnoticed, due mainly to lack of education among providers and the healthcare system in general. And, finally, the most importantly, the symptoms of PCOS can be reversed naturally. So I wanted to start out by sharing a little bit of my journey with you. I'm often asked what brought me to my calling of helping other women overcome their hormonal imbalances and PCOS symptoms naturally. And to be honest, it all started with a pack of flying birth control pills, ironically enough. And I remember it like yesterday. It was just the moment that I just decided to make a major change in the course of my life and pursue Chinese medicine studies. And, as a kid, I was always fascinated by plants, and I used to make my own acne remedies with herbs that I would purchase with my allowance money from a health food store down the street from my house. And I lived in this really small town, so there was literally one red light. So we would just walk wherever we need to go during the summer, and we had this little herbal store that was literally the 5-minute walk. And I would actually go in there and actually get a lot of information on what could help me naturally. So my mother would open the refrigerator and she would see my homemade acne tinctures made from steeping rosemary and witch hazel. And I eventually compiled my own little book of hair and skin remedies at the age of 11. So even then I knew something was off with my hormones. So that book had recipes and before and after results. And it was a pretty cool little binder. I wish I still had it. But as I grew up, my curiosity in solving all the peculiar hormonal changes that were going on with my body as I hit puberty made me want to learn how to solve some of these issues with plants and herbs that I could find by reading books and making my own formulas. And, fast forward to the dark ages of the late 1990s, before Google and Wikipedia, I was in undergraduate school and I still had no clue what was wrong with me. My cycles were becoming more and more irregular, really wreaking havoc on my hormones, and sometimes they would just disappear for several months. And, I was really just fed up. I mean, I felt like I had weeks and weeks of just never-ending PMS and, mood swings, anxiety, and I finally decided to seek help. So 4 different gynecologists had told me all the same thing, that birth control was my only answer. And unfortunately, or fortunately, it wasn't so simple for me. So my body responds to birth control a bit like someone recovering from a hangover, with nausea and headaches and chills and vomiting. And so much so that I just really, felt like I couldn't take anymore. So that brings me to the moment that changed my life. I was struck by a flying pack of birth control pills, literally hurled at my head by my gynecologist. And I was told not to come back unless I'd taken the whole pack after I had mentioned these, horrible side effects that I had experienced. And I just become at that point really angry. And I just said, there had to be a better way. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that I had to have another option. So that was nearly 20 years ago, that fateful gynecology visit. But I just still remember it so clearly because that day I made a promise to myself. I left the office in tears, but I vowed to find an answer and, to help other girls and women when I did. And at the age of 19, I left my pre-med studies and I headed to acupuncture school. And, without even experiencing a treatment for myself, I just knew that this made more sense to me and maybe worked better for my body, especially with all of the herbal medicine studies that I've been doing. So I discovered that what I was experiencing, really undiagnosed PCOS, could be helped naturally. And within 6 months, I was having normal cycles for the first time in my life. Yay. And, after undergoing weekly acupuncture sessions at my school clinic. And I was digesting some pretty pungent Chinese herbal concoctions, but my PMS symptoms were gone. And my acne, I didn't have as many mood swings. And I just really felt like, this is what normal feels like. I hadn't really felt that. So, and so I also had a few, I told him to work in some acupuncture points for sugar cravings because that was one of my nemesis, and it was pretty bad. But I eventually eliminated sugar and dairy, and that was a huge feat for me, and that made a tremendous difference in my symptoms as well. So now I've been practicing traditional Chinese medicine for nearly half my life, and I devoted my practice to helping women who struggle with PCOS and hormonal imbalances and infertility. I have 2 beautiful children, and I'm just so thankful for the guidance that I had during those very dark times. And I also learned along the way that my patients have been my greatest teachers, and they've inspired me to reach out to other women who might not have the support that they need. And my mission is really to help women to take back control of their bodies without disguising their PCOS symptoms with medications. And I really can't tell you how many young girls I see now. They're 13 or 14 years old, and they're being brought to our clinic because they really don't want to be put on birth control. For symptoms like acne or mood swings or wacky cycles. And instead, they just want to know why it's happening, and perhaps they were never told that they even had PCOS. So what a gift it's been to able to help them take charge of their PCOS symptoms from the start, instead of waiting until they've been on birth control for 15 or 20 years, and then they're faced with more insulin resistance and fertility issues and possible weight gain. So, by using an integrative approach of traditional Chinese medicine, nutritional therapy, and working in conjunction with their gynecologist and reproductive medicine doctors, we've really been able to achieve incredible things. And so this actually, brings me to the PCOS Revolution podcast. And really what we're going to be doing is taking a journey into unraveling some of the mysteries that still elude us regarding the treatment of PCOS. So each new episode will feature the latest research and some tips on reversing symptoms such as acne, mood swings, and hair loss, and abnormal hair growth, insulin resistance, and weight gain. And we'll also talk about tips for revving up your fertility and your libido naturally, and in preparation for medicated cycles as well, what you can do to actually maximize your cycles and hopefully your success rates. So I have some very special guests in store for you you, which include reproductive endocrinologists, nutritionists, psychologists, naturopaths, and gynecologists who have a passion for helping us understand what we can do to really grab our PCOS by the reins and start making changes that'll last a lifetime. And really, trust me, you don't want to miss what they have to say. It's incredibly interesting and informative. And I'd love to know your thoughts and ideas about what's been on your mind about our PCOS Revolution podcast. So you can go to our Facebook page and PM me as well, or email me at ask@pcospodcast.com. And really just, any burning questions that you'd like to see answered during this show, and definitely we'll take good care of you. And join me weekly. You can listen to each of the episodes through the website at pcospodcast.com. I have a player set up along with show notes of each episode, and these are basically summaries of the episodes. So when I have guests on the podcast, I'm asking them for resources and things that they recommend. So you'll find all of that information on the website as well. The second thing I want to point out is that I put together a resource page, which you can find at pcospodcast.com/resources. And what I did was I just posted some really helpful items that we recommend to our patients with PCOS that can help whether you've just been diagnosed or have been struggling with PCOS for years. And I've included books and supplements and a free PCOS meditation as well to get you started. And the final thing I want to point out is that I've included a free PDF booklet on tips for those of you struggling with infertility and perhaps preparing for a medicated cycle with IUI or IVF. And some of you know PCOS is one of the biggest causes of infertility. So I just wanted to give you guys something that might help you get a little ahead of the curve when facing an upcoming cycle. And you can find this on the website as well at pcospodcast.com. So as I wrap up, I just want to thank you so much for listening to this first episode, and I can't wait to start jumping into the PCOS Revolution with you. The only one little favor I ask is that as you listen to these first couple of episodes, I would ask that you subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating and a positive review on iTunes. And you can do all of that through the website, which is again found at pcospodcast.com. And the more subscriptions and 5-star ratings and positive reviews there are, that helps really any podcast just get out to the larger iTunes community, which I think is now over 1 billion people. So, my dream really with this podcast is that it reaches every young girl or woman struggling with PCOS. And I would be so grateful if you could just help me make that happen. So thank you, everyone. And I look forward to our next episode.
Thanks for listening to the PCOS Revolution podcast. Be sure to visit us on Facebook and Instagram to join in the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. If you love the PCOS Revolution, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes. Until next time, beautiful ladies.